Audio.
I don't even care if I just get on a whole bunch of new boulders and don't do them. If I fall on the last move of the Big Island, oh my goodness, could you imagine being that skilled and that strong to fall on the last move of V15? I can die happy with that.
Hey y'all, I'm Ryan Devlin, and welcome to this month's Struggle Climbing Show Coach Chat, where I connect with elite climbing coaches to talk through where my personal training is at, cover some listener questions, and dive into a training topic that I think is going to help you all out as you navigate your own training and climbing goals. How are you doing? I hope you're doing good. Happy Wednesday, or whatever day it is that you're listening to this podcast. Thank you for being here. I appreciate it. Now, today we're chalking up for a chat with Coach Charlie Schreiber of Paradigm Climbing. Charlie is an incredibly driven coach and climber who works harder than pretty much anybody that I've ever connected with, and I connect with some really hard workers. This guy is obsessed with climbing, performance, training, and just helping his clients to blow their goals out of the water. Now, a little background on Charlie. He was a competitive climber competing in the World Cup level, and on rock, he is a solid V double-digit boulderer and 514 sport climber. He's famously been projecting the V15 masterpiece, the Big Island, out in Font, honing the strength and the movement on an exact replica that he built in his gym, and we dive into some replica stuff in this conversation here. And as founder of Paradigm Climbing, Charlie works with climbers of all abilities and from all manner of backgrounds, from youth crushers to weekend warriors who just want to get the most fulfillment out of their training and their climbing. You might also recognize the names of Charlie's other coaches, both of whom have been past guests on the show here. I'm talking about Alex Johnson and Cameron Hurst. A lot of cool stuff happening over at Paradigm right now. And in today's Coach Chat, Charlie and I explore junk mileage on and off the wall, minimum effective dose of training for when we're super busy or we're traveling, using replicas to dial in our project, practicing harder than we play, and then we wrap up with an incredibly insightful focus on mindset and happiness as it pertains to measuring success in our training that I personally found to be a total game changer for me as I buckle down on a training season, and you do not want to miss that part of the conversation. And speaking of training, a little update from my world of climbing and life over here. On the heels of my super inspiring time over in Yosemite a few weeks back, I'm now fully committing to a strength training block. And I got to tell you, I'm pretty hyped about it. You know, I'm ready. I'm ready to dig in on some hardcore training. The temps and the humidity here in Kentucky have been climbing fast. And I'm still getting out to the red here and there to spend some time in that beautiful nature and just keep sharp on the sharp end of the rope there. But honestly, most of my effort now is just focused on building up some strength and some power, mostly on the strength side. So I'm going to be sharing a little bit more of that journey on Instagram as I dive into the weights and weighted hangs and some other off-the-wall training stuff for the next couple of months or so stay tuned there. And as I spend more time off the wall at the start of the summer season here, one piece of gear that I am using more than anything else right now are my shoes. And I'm not talking about my climbing shoes here. I'm talking about my trainers. And as you'll see in the videos that I'm posting on Instagram, my go-to kicks for lifting, for road running, for trail running, for pretty much everything that I'm doing are the Golden Gate 2s by SCARPA. You guys, real talk here. These are hands down the most comfortable running shoes that I've ever worn. I'm serious. They are a friggin' dream. They transition from the sidewalk to the trails down the road from my neighborhood with absolute ease. They're super light and their support is off the charts. So I got a history of knee pain, and then I've also got a herniated disc in my lower back. I just turned 45. Maybe I'm falling apart, but that's all meant that in the past, running has been off the table. And I love to run, but it's just been really hard on my knees and my back. But guess what? With these shoes, I don't know what it is, but I have been enjoying a weekly run along with the heavy workouts that I've been doing in the gym, like deadlifting and squats and all that stuff in these Golden Gates by SCARPA. And I just haven't had any of that pain. It's the craziest thing. I can't say enough about them. If you're in the market for some new trainers, check them out. If you don't like them, I will happily take them off your hands as long as we are the same foot size. They're just that good. All right, let me wrap up this ad here. I'm super grateful to have SCARPA supporting the show because I've been wearing their shoes for a decade now. And if you support them, you're supporting the struggle. So thank you. You can shop the whole collection over at scarpa.com. SCARPA, no place too far. This episode is supported by Boulder Bears caffeinated gummy bears. Oh my gosh, I've already got a smile on my face just saying it. I love these things so much. They taste like candy and they kick like coffee. They are legit fantastic. I'm pretty sensitive to caffeine personally. If I take too much, it makes me jittery, kind of gets in my head. That is not what I want when I'm on a route. And so what's cool about these Boulder Bears is that each one contains 20 milligrams of caffeine, plus a little bit of collagen, so that I can perfectly dial in the boost that I want and also take care of my tendons while I'm at it. So like if I'm gonna have a long day at the crag, maybe I'll have one an hour and it'll just keep me like focused up with a little bit of energy that'll last all day. Or if I'm gonna go hit like a moonboard session or a bouldering session really hard, I'll have like 4 or 5 gummies all at once and boom, it gives me that hit, that boost, that focus right when I need it. I also love that they're just tiny and they're light, so they don't weigh down my pack on the hike in or my stomach when I'm trying to climb at my limit. There's no like liquid, like, coffee or Red Bull sloshing around when I'm trying to pull hard. I love these Boulder Bears so much. You can score a free refillable travel pouch plus 15% off when you order a bundle right now using code STRUGGLE over at boulderbears.com. They're a small company. I know the owner. It's such a cool thing they're doing. The link is right there in your podcast player. Boulder Bears, all flash, no crash. And lastly, just one super quick and easy request for y'all, if you're willing to do me a solid, a birthday favor, if you will. I'm working super hard on this show, and if you like what I'm doing, it would be really rad to have you rate and review it over on Apple or Spotify. It only takes a second. Like, it's really quick, and it actually does make a huge difference on how visible the show is to new listeners, like the algorithm or whatever it is that they do over there. So you can even do that right now. Just go ahead and slam those stars or whatever it is. Thank you. I love you. All right, now let's get stronger together with Charlie Schreiber. I know you as a coach. I know you as a climber. I know you as the crazy guy who built the Big Island replica. I'm excited to sit down and chat, man. I mean, it's a coach chat, so we're going to let it wander. We're going to see where it goes, but I'd love to just check in with you. Give me a little recap of what's been going on with you and Paradigm, and then we can flow into some geeky coach training stuff.
Well, with Paradigm, I have been really lucky to keep receiving fantastic clients and site climbers. It's unbelievable how many kind, really motivated, and just good friends are coming to me for coaching. And it's every day I wake up and I'm excited to go to my phone or the computer and talk and help people. And really just so excited to keep growing this thing because of that exact aspect of the business. I have all my goals right now. They used to be based on my personal climbing, like financial goals, and then like traveling and things I wanted to do with my youth teams. And now everything is kind of shaping around how can I make Paradigm the best service for the people that I currently work with and for people that don't know I exist or are looking for a coach. And so every day and basically everything that I do is just targeted at that exact value adding focus. So like, what, can I do to improve the way that I communicate with people? What can I do so that I can be a better resource of information? How can I learn about new aspects of things that my clients are struggling with and maybe seek out a new field that I can consider myself highly knowledgeable in? What can I do to make things easier for people to use on the program interaction and user experience side? What can I do so that I can make better, more educational and just value-adding content, like things that make people laugh and people that are thought-provoking, that teach something unique and inspire? Those are like my 5. There's a 5th pillar. It's kind of just a client sharing what's going on with the company and like my personal life and like what I do in the business. So those are the 5 things I like to focus on with generating content, which is so much of the job now. And I love it. It's its own world of challenge and unique experiences. And it's very finicky. It's almost like climbing. There's just so many things you need to consider and work at.
Yeah, well, you're definitely working hard. I mean, I can tell you're hustling. You're building a business. You're working with some real crushers out there. I've seen a lot of you sharing a lot of posts about clients who are out there in the comp world, but also out just projecting boulders or whatever their projects are, and climbing really hard. And then you climb hard too. When do you get to work in your own personal training and your climbing amidst hustling so hard on the business side?
Yeah, I always make sure that my climbing is number one. It's a priority that no matter how much work I have, what's going on in my life, I always stick to when I know I need to go climb. And that is something that will always, it's my happiness. It's my passion. It's all of my personal fulfillment to me, the highest level. The business and my client successes are actually, for the first time ever in my life, starting to surpass my own accomplishments, where I want to work on this business and help the people I work with even more than I want to see myself succeed. But it has not gotten to the point where I'm pushing off my sessions or sacrificing them.
Well, I think that's pretty relatable for me doing this podcast, having a job and a family, and a lot of people listening, whether they're in school or they're professionals. We have to prioritize our climbing and our training, because if we don't, there's always going to be something that's going to fill in. It's like when you're digging a hole in wet sand, and it just it's just always going to fill in around if you don't kind of prioritize that scoop that you're currently pulling. So it's nice that you share that, because I'm sure a lot of the clients that you work with are also pretty busy people just trying to fit it in.
Yeah, that's a huge challenge for so many. That's why a lot of people actually reach out, is they are really struggling to make the best use of their time, of what time they have, or they can't even really find the excuse or the motivation or the accountability for themselves to prioritize it, even when they know they should. And they know deep down that that's what they truly want. But it's just, I think it's a natural inclination of the brain to say, this is what I have to do, like my work, my life things that are always going to be there. But my climbing is the thing that is my true passion and lights up my brain like nothing else. And they feel a certain amount of pain because they know that they're not giving that the focus and the attention and the time that is going to align with their ideal, range of bliss and fulfillment. So they constantly shortchange it. And I think they're just looking for a push to say, hey, this is actually what you can do if we really structure your schedule correctly and we do the minimal effective dose. You can move forward, and you can also have a ton of fun if we change your schedule or even just your sessions to look like this.
Yeah, that's really interesting. There isn't a whole lot of an agenda that I tend to bring into coach chats. I like to see where I'm at with my training and climbing and what sparks with the guests that I have on. But one of the things that I've been more immediately struggling with on my side is that notion right there of finding the time. And it's just been an incredibly busy season for me with this show, because it's growing really fast, which I'm so hyped on. I love it. It's what started as like this kind of little passion project podcast is now growing into something that maybe, this year I might actually, be able to turn into my career, which is really cool and exciting, but it also requires an extra level of hustle in order to get there. So I think a lot of people, again, whether you're a student, a young professional that's hustling, you're a parent, regardless of what phase in life you're in, a lot of people feel busy. It's just like maybe the culture that we're in these days. And I'd like to talk about scheduling for a second. You mentioned minimum effective dose and working with different types of schedules. And I'm curious how you work with clients who are quite busy to achieve their goals, and if there's a way to generalize it in some sense, or for us to have some thought experiments for those who are listening in right now. We can use me as a guinea pig, but I want to make it as useful for all who are listening as possible, to start looking at the time that we have in any given day or week or month or season and figure out how we can light up our brains, as you said, and work in the training and the climbing and our performance goals when we have all these other responsibilities to answer to as well.
Yeah, there is, an endless range of responsibilities and things to consider when you're looking at your macro schedule of like your week or your month. That's what I do every month is I look at everything that I have on a weekly basis. And then I look at, like within each month, you've got just random events on the weekends and during the week.
Sure.
You've got a podcast that you've got to go on and talk on. So
Right.
I like to, for my climbing, I will always do that first before I do my business. And I will plot out when I know that I want to get sessions in. And I'll be honest, there's a lot of in real time adjustments because I don't stick to my schedule to a T. I don't think anybody ever should force themselves to stick to a schedule to a T, because if you need extra recovery time or you feel exceptional when you gave yourself ample recovery time and you think you can get a good training session in sooner, then you should be able to change that. But looking at your week and knowing when you are most efficient at doing different types of work. So I know that when I wake up in the morning, for me, I'm a big morning person. When I wake up at around 5:30, that is my golden opportunity for about 4 hours to just knock out all of my work. I communicate and answer all of my text messages, my emails. I do whatever plan adjustments I need to make for people. And then I get to the meat of the day that I scheduled at the beginning of the week, which I had a very rough draft of at the beginning of the month. So I know that this week on Monday, I've got a session for myself that I really want to get in at 4:00. Okay, if I'm going to get in that session, I'm not going to have any stress. I'm going to get all those things done in the morning. And then I'm going to know that before 4, I want to accomplish these things. That session will probably end around 6, so that I'll be back in my place around 6:30. And that means that I want to schedule my calls after, honestly, 6:45, 7. I like to give myself some time. And if I keep doing that, and I know that I give myself all the time for all the things that I need to get done, and I block everything out, and I know that, it's not going to be nighttime, and I'm going to say, oh man, I left this work for now, and I don't want to do it right now. I'm tired. I'm not, my brain starts turning off at around 8:30. And
Right.
I need to wind down and read and go to sleep.
So it's really understanding, I appreciate you breaking down kind of what like that day looks like. You understand for yourself that you're, in terms of like an admin side, like work productivity, you're very productive first thing right when you wake up and get going. Some people, it might be the opposite. Some people wake up and they really want to get that workout in right away, and then, or they have a job that starts at 9 a.m. So they wake up at 6 and they get a couple hour workout in. So obviously it's individualized, but it's really understanding for you where you're going to be most productive, scheduling those blocks. And then you also, it sounds like you schedule your workout. You're not just like fitting your workout in, or like, oh, if I get this work done, I'll pop by the gym and I'll get something in. But you're like putting it in there as if it's an appointment, as if you've got a 2-hour work call and it's just, board training or whatever it is that you're supposed to be doing that day. You're putting it in that schedule so that it's there and is prioritized as much so as if it were some work meeting.
Oh yeah, my climbing training, or my just any climbing for myself, that is my dream job interview. That is, basically if I had a dream job interview and I was going to get this one chance, I can't reschedule it. I mean, let's be honest, I can, but if I know that I can and I want to train this day, there is nothing that will get in the way of it.
Mm-hmm.
Zero, unless there is an absolute catastrophe. That is the priority. And it is that you really need if you're going to stay consistent, stay committed, and give it the passion and focus. It's all in alignment. You have to be all in if you're going to guarantee the thing that is most important to you. So
yeah, cool.
I think that the biggest thing that people really miss the mark of when they're even looking at their schedule in the way that I am is efficiency in what you're doing. I think a ton of people that I talk to, a lot of my friends, don't do what I do, which is called deep work, where I will take my phone, put it away. I put on focus music on Spotify, and I just do what it is that I am doing 4 hours uninterrupted. I get into flow. I get into a higher quality of work. I am more efficient, and I guarantee that it's going to get done. Nothing will distract me. There is no opportunity to be distracted. Then the same thing with my, the next thing that I'm doing is, I'm always looking at what are the highest priority and most time sensitive things to do. So that for me is always communicating with my clients and offering guidance and mentorship and coaching them. So giving them movement feedback. That happens first every day, guaranteed. I will never miss that no matter what. Next thing is the plans. I've got to get these plans adjusted so that we keep avoiding setbacks, that we make sure that the plan is the direct line to their goals. Then I get my climbing in. Next one is my calls. And life things pop up all the time. Of course, you've got a doctor's appointment, whatever it is, blah, blah, blah. You can fit that in when you have extra time. And I do have extra time slotted in the week every other day to accomplish those things. But it also, goes to your climbing session. If you're allowing distractions or you're doing things that, don't serve you on your way to your goals, like if I were, I'm answering texts while I'm doing my work for plans, that's going to detract from both of those things because I'm not focused. Right. Or if I'm, like reading a magazine and it's just for pleasure, okay, that's great. Or scrolling Instagram. Okay, that's entertaining. And, I maybe can glean some information from that, but that's not the essentials for getting me to the things that are fulfilling for me and will make me feel successful in accomplishing my goals. So just like climbing, everybody is guilty of junk mileage. And junk mileage isn't just we're kind of tired or we're, unfocused and we're just climbing. Junk mileage is anything you're doing that is not serving a purpose and is going to result in an adaptation. And it's fine to have a small level of junk mileage. It's okay to relax your brain and have fun. But if you're not aware that that's what you're doing and you're not aware of the setback or the detraction from the high quality work that's associated with that, that's when you start wasting time. You're having too long of sessions, or you are actually now adding on excess recovery time and moving away from your goals, which you would have been better off had you just stopped after sometimes 30 minutes.
I love the metaphor there between the junk mileage of training and the junk mileage of life, because it definitely is. There's lessons to be learned on both sides there. And that's one of the things I discovered just as I got busier, in fact, was that while I had less time and have less time these days to train, I feel like I'm more effective with my training because I'm not messing around, dude. I'm like, okay, I've got an hour before I need to pick my daughter up and the gym is right across the street from her school. I'm like, okay, I'm going to go in there and I am going to bang out what would have normally probably been a 2-hour session in an hour, because I'm not going to socialize in between. And I'm going to have my music in my ears so people know to kind of stay away. And I'm not going to be answering emails in between. So you can kind of do it, but it does take a certain amount of discipline, especially if you're accustomed to, you try a hard boulder and then you go hang out for a while, or you scroll Instagram, it's like a way of thinking. It's a way of organizing your training. Or instead of going to the gym, just, sometimes I'll just do it at home, like on my little spray wall in my basement and with my force board, force gauge or whatever. And maybe it's not as fun and psyched and social as when I'm doing a moonboard session with buddies, but it hits that minimum effective dose. And so, yeah, I think the busier you are, the more forced you are to be disciplined and to be efficient.
Absolutely. It's a full spectrum, right? It's like a scale. There is completely reckless sessions where there is no direction and no focus and you're just having a great time. You're not concerned with getting better or being organized about anything. And then there's the hyper-focused. And I think that people can really achieve the hyper-focus while they're still having fun, having engaging conversations and enjoying themselves. You just have to set a tone and honestly be able to communicate with others around you. I think honestly for the best example and the most applicable, I think, is the social aspect. because I'm painfully social. I am such an extrovert. And when I'm in the gym, I like talking to everybody.
Right.
And I don't want to sacrifice my, the efficiency and the effectiveness of my training to get lost in conversation. So I've done a lot of work in talking with a couple of experts in this subject that are good at just communicating that this is my time to focus. I'm still in the conversation. I'm still having fun with you. But a simple phrase like, hey, give me 1 second. I just have a set. And having your phone out with the timer going or having your journal open with the notes out already communicates that. That says, oh, he's having a good time. He's talking with me, but he's here for business. Okay. And wow, that's really impressive. That's inspiring. He can have both of these things. And look how organized and detail oriented he is. Huh. That's cool. Maybe I'll emulate that and try keeping some notes and being more organized.
Well, man, I appreciate it. I think it's a good perspective. It's a cool place for us to jump into because you're not only busy yourself and also climbing at a really high level, but you're working with a lot of different types of climbers and clients who have various responsibilities. Some are in school, some are professionals, some are parents. Many are super, super high performing and really prioritize their training and their climbing. And so it's a good perspective. And it's something that's, again, for me, I've been hitting lately. And so I want to get your advice on just one thing here. And this maybe ties back into minimum effective dose. And then we can parlay into some projecting talk and processes. We can geek out over some replica strategies and that kind of thing. But I'm about to tuck into some travel, and it's going to be a couple of weeks, maybe 3 weeks, where I might not be able to get to a rock climbing gym. And it's been a little while since that's happened, but just like the confluence of things that are coming up here as summer kicks off, I'll be able to travel with, a little portable hangboard and my force board force gauge. I will likely have some access to like standard gyms, like in a hotel, like fitness centers where there's dumbbells and maybe a pull-up bar and this kind of thing, but likely won't be able to go and get like a moonboard session in. Maybe if I get lucky and can sneak away, I will. So that's a little bit different than this past year where I've had a lot of access to the crag or to my gym. And I'm curious what thoughts or advice you'd have for me over the next few weeks here. I'm not talking 6 months, it's a few weeks, but climbers get a little bit obsessed when we're kind of like out of our world for, a short period of time even. And so what is the minimum effective dose, do you think, as I'm about to take off for a few weeks here and not likely have full climbing sessions?
Well, there are so many ways to answer this question. There is obviously looking at what type of training stimulus you're currently trying to yield from your sessions. Are you in a block where you're training endurance, hypertrophy, strength, power?
Yeah, I probably should have shared that as well. So I just kind of am going into like a strength focus. So I've been doing some heavyweight lifting, bench, squat, deadlift, some shoulder presses, weighted pull-ups, that kind of thing, heavy hangs, kind of max hangs using the force board. I see you've got a program actually on the force board. And trying to do like a day of endurance, like, because I'm a Red River Gorge climber, so I don't want to like turn my back on that energy system totally. So I try to do like a day of, maybe it would be like 2 minutes on, 1 minute off on a spray wall or something, which again, I won't have access to, but more so focused on strength right now as the summer's kicking off and I'm not really in a performance phase.
So, I mean, if you're not at a climbing gym, there's always the sacrifice of you're not climbing. So you do have to make up for the things that you're not missing, that you're going to be missing when you're just working with, an iron gym, like your standard gym and a block. So, I mean, to your body, the stimulus to the muscles can feel almost the exact same when you're using a block. Obviously, you're limited in your grip variation, but having everything within the same parameters of the style that you've been training to keep the consistency, keep sending the same signals of the same style. And minimal effective dose, I mean, it's really, how much time do you have? The minimal effective dose is your minimal adaptive volume. So what is it that you can get in and the bare minimum that will yield improvements? So
are there any like general rules? Because obviously it is individualized based on training age and, performance level and these kinds of things. But is there a general rule that you live by with regard to maintenance versus where you might lose or where you're kind of gaining? We could take hangboarding, as the example. Like how often over the course of a week should I try to hit that? Or how often should I try to hit bench press if I'm trying to maintain versus gain?
It does depend on, your training history, but generally it's like, 2 sets once a week for maintenance. Maybe 1 set once a week if it's intense enough. The variables, it just has to be enough to stimulate the muscle so that it's enough to recover from, obviously, and it's enough to send a powerful enough signal to, when you will have that signal eventually fade and turn off based on how many days or how much time goes between the sessions. It should just be powerful enough. And sometimes that if you've been doing it a lot, if you've been working out, you go on a trip, a week goes by, 2 weeks go by, you don't lose any physiological changes. Nothing happens to your muscles. You're not losing muscle. Soft tissue's not changing. It's just the neurons are going to, the neurological adaptations that you've made are just going to fade away a little bit. So they go to sleep. They don't disappear. The pathway has been trained to reconnect pretty quickly. So I think a lot of it is just that. But if you are looking for longer term physiological adaptations, just getting in the session, the reps and the sets and making sure that everything's within the guidelines.
Yeah. 1 a week is so doable, right? Like, I don't know, in my mind, I was like, oh yeah, probably 3 times a week or something. But like, even in your busiest times, it just feels like you could walk over to a door jam and do some like max pulls, on the fingers for a few sets during conference calls or something like that. Like this, it's easier to maintain, it sounds like, than maybe I was thinking, which is that's good news. That's a good thing. I mean, you don't want to do that forever, but if you're going away for a few weeks, like I'm going to be doing, I don't have to be scheduling a whole ton of training. It doesn't seem like I can be present with the work and the family vacations and the things that I'm doing and not worry that in a few weeks when I get back, I'm, back to where I was 2 years ago. So yeah, that's good, man. No, I appreciate that. And I think this will be a fun conversation to maybe follow back on as I get, a little bit into the summer and then go towards the fall and really get focused on some training, which is, some of which where I want to take this conversation now. And that's on replicas, because you've got quite a bit of experience there. If anybody's heard some of your prior interviews on The Nugget or seen your posts on Instagram, you've created this like exact replica of the Big Island, which is the mega proj and a hell of a boulder problem. V15. I had Emil Abrahamson on the show. We've talked quite a bit about that and his training for that as well. And you've had like a really cool journey down that rabbit hole. And I think replicas have become really popular recently as now the technology exists to scan some of these holds, though not everybody will have access to that or have the budget to be able to do it. And so that's the lens that I'd like to look through, because I'm not going to go and like scan the holds and buy the holds for the red point crux of my project, the Force. I'd just like to be able to take some of the aspects of that style of training that you've become an expert in and see how I can apply it using the holds at my gym or on a moon board or on my spray wall in my basement here for, kind of minimal investment, and still try to utilize that theory of training in the best way. And I'm not quite sure how to do that, aside from just like, oh yeah, it feels like the holds, but like, how does one train best, or how does one look at replica style training and preparation for a route?
Right. Okay. So the first thing that is the most important is the accuracy of your replica, because you're right there in the word, you are trying to replicate all aspects of this climb, because there is no better training than time on the actual climb. You need to be learning the minutia of all the positions, the movements, the holds, all of the distances, and even the angle of the walls should be as accurate as possible. And next is really the features. The 3-dimensional aspect of every climb is so much more influential than we think. And that was why I was so obsessive about the Big Island. And I went there and used what I highly recommend everyone do is use the Polycam app. Is really easy to just scan the boulder, and it's not extremely highly detailed. We use LiDAR scanning and other tools to really get all of the details. But what it does tell you is the distances in all directions of the between holds, and how far out does that feature come, and what are the angles between the holds. So I actually just had a client recently who's replicating a boulder in the gunks, and he sent me a video of a replica he made on a board. And I pulled up the video, and I just did a literal scan of the boulder through in a video, and the distances were way off. And that was going to make it so that when he got to the climb, it didn't feel the same. And there was a very low transfer rate from, gains in all aspects to the actual event he's training for. So getting it right is huge. And then identifying your own personal priorities and the intensity levels based on every single movement. And then creating a goal list based on all different possibilities of links and connections between moves. So I made a list that had about 40 different possible connections of move 1 to the foot move 7, every single possible gap. So I had all these different things that I was excited about checking off. So I had many different goals, as opposed to losing momentum and being lost in the monotony of set and rep and intensity based training for this goal, which I knew would be the most optimal form of training. And so I determined the priority level. So that would be the frequency at which I work this move. That's going to be the most frequent, because that is the most important move for me to make progress on, because it's my personal crux and it's the one that I understand the least. So it's really important I spend extra time on that. But now, based on the intensity level of that, now there's a balance. It's I have to train this all the time, but if I invest all of my efforts into this, I'm going to get too tired to really make good use of any other efforts if I try it more than, for me, it was 6 times. If I tried the crux move on the Big Island 6 times or more, I figured this out, it would just make it so that my fingers would not be able to, I think, have optimal movement patterns for the rest of my body, because I just wasn't as stable in the positions like I would be if I were fresh.
Sure.
So I would have alternating sessions where I would have a certain amount of reps at a certain amount of intensity for that move. And then I would have another session where it was more movements. So just more set or exercises, you would call it, but it would be a little bit lower repetition and lower intensity, so I could do more movement. Because I always personally feel when you work a boulder or work, do anything in climbing, and you're only working one move, that energy system needed and just your general flow through climbing is really interrupted and is receiving a disservice, because you're not operating in the rep range that you otherwise should be for the actual climb.
Right.
So I would always make sure to just warm up on other boulders in a similar style that were the move count of the entire climb of the Big Island. And then I would do the session in an alternating fashion. So I would always hit all of the moves, but it would be, higher intensity, lower rep count, and then slightly lower intensity, still low rep count, but more sets.
This episode is supported by Rungni, which of course is Magnus Mitbo's brand, and I got to take a second here to just tell you how ridiculously good their climbing pants and shorts are, you guys. Look, I'm sure you love your cutoff jeans, but you got to throw them away. I am not exaggerating when I say that the harness pants by Rungni are by far the best climbing pants that I've ever owned. I wore them recently when I climbed those 31 pitches in a day, which almost killed me, but the pants were a dream. Temperatures swung 30 degrees. We dealt with water and mud and just a ton of movement, of course, over 31 pitches, and they were so lightweight and stretchy and such a good fit. I cannot say enough about them. you are going to be blown away by these pants. And now, as temperatures are warming up, I've been wearing the harness shorts, and they have the same fantastic fit and stretch as the pants. Plus, I gotta say this, I wore them on a date with my wife the other day, and she said that they made my butt look good. And we've been married for 15 years, so anytime she's noticing my butt is a big win, you guys. Legit, they make the best climbing gear around, and it's not going to break the bank. You can pop over to thestruggleclimbingshow.com/rungney to see the entire line, and then you can use that link in your notes or just use code STRUGGLE at checkout to score 15% off everything. How cool is that? I love these pants. This episode is supported by MAXIM ropes, and if you take as many whips as I do, you want to be sure that your rope is amazing, and I'm telling you guys, my Airliner is hands down the nicest rope that I have ever tied into. The 9.1 millimeter MAXIM Airliner is an ultralight and skinny lead line, but that featherweight doesn't sacrifice an ounce of performance, y'all. It is frequently referred to as the indestructible Airliner due to its longevity, which is awesome for a few reasons. First, peace of mind. So, I mean, real talk here, I struggle with fear of falling, and I just want full confidence that my rope has got me, and the Airliner, which is triple certified, goes above and beyond in that department. I love it. And then second, I don't want to have to shell out for a new rope every season. They're expensive, and MAXIM goes the distance here, which also means that it has a smaller impact on our environment, which is really cool. And then lastly, the Airliner is so light, it makes the approach a breeze. It feeds through my gear incredibly smoothly, so I can save all of that energy to flail around on my project. Not MAXIM's fault, but I'm working on it. So if you're looking for a super lightweight, ultra thin, and extremely durable cord, you have found it. Check it out at your local gear shop or online. And you can see all of the ropes that MAXIM has to offer by hitting that link in your show notes there or popping over to thestruggleclimbingshow.com/MAXIM. Well, let me take a step back for a second and just to explore kind of the replica setup itself, because you mentioned using this app. What was the name of the app to scan?
It's Polycam.
Polycam. So then anyone can download that and scan like a sequence on their project or a boulder or whatever. And then within that, you're able to pull up distances between holds. Is that right?
Yeah.
And is the idea here to replicate it as close as possible so that you're learning movement, like body positions? Is that the biggest benefit? Or is it about building strength in specific ways based on how you have to pull into different holds? Is it a strength adaptation or is it a kind of a movement adaptation?
It's honestly it's both, and they're the same thing. They are the same thing, because you really can't isolate one, because that defeats the purpose. You might as well just hangboard or get the holds of the climb and then just pull on them or hold them in maybe the way that you're doing it on the. There's too much that plays together to compartmentalize it even further than the moves themselves, because it is so specific. That's why you're replicating it.
Right.
So
now if we can't go fully to scanning holds and this kind of thing, but we could still use the app there to understand distances and angle. And then, so like the crux on my project is, about 25 degrees overhung, and I've got a 25 degree wall. I've got a spray wall in my basement, but then there's a 25 degree moon board at one of the gyms that I go to. And so I've got the access to the angle, but I'm not going to be scanning holds, though I know what the holds are. They're like 2 and 3 finger pocket that are a pad or a pad and a half, and there's plenty of those that exist out in the gym. And so even if I don't have the exact holds, but I can get the distances and the angle, it's obviously not going to be as specific as what you're talking about doing with the Big Island or what has been done on Burden of Dreams and these kinds of things. But at what point is kind of it more beneficial than just training on some other, methodology, just training on a moon board versus trying to map out these distances and replicate moves as good as you can without maybe owning a gym or having the ability to scan holds?
Well, the point is that you're looking for the most effective tool and the most effective gains in moving you towards doing the climb itself. What is your biggest issue? If you could, I could argue that if you were getting on your route and like you replicated this route, it's a sport route that you're working?
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, I could argue that depending on what your need is, that using a replica is not going to be as effective as doing a one-dimensional either hangboard exercise or a rate of force development exercise, or even a mobility exercise or a specific strength exercise. We're really looking at what are the most necessary factors that need to increase, what variable needs to improve for you to unlock the climb. If you're always getting your hand to the hold and you're hitting it and your fingers are opening up, you've got the movement down. I'd love to look at it, because you and I both know that even if you're getting your hands there, there's still a huge margin of how well are you executing the movement. Is your dead point perfect? What's your knee doing at the time? Are you like locking down with your feet at the appropriate moment? How much tension are you creating? So there's a conversation to be had there. I mean, this is really so important to be very introspective as the athlete, to know what is the true thing that I need here. And but if it was determined to be, you just need faster recruitment of the forearm flexors in that grip position, I would say, okay, well, stop. Don't even risk doing this move on the replica if anytime you attempt it, you won't get a successful impact. Like, if you don't get a successful contraction that is within the intensity parameters that will yield faster fingers, then don't do it. In this case, then the protocol is more beneficial. But I think, if you can't get to your project often, like mine's in France, so I'm not going there every month or even every couple months, it's really more important for me to know that I need to learn this climb, because I need to glean every single technical aspect of this thing and make it hardwired into me. But if I'm being honest, it's my fingers across the board in these grip positions need to be stronger, way stronger. So I'm doing it. I'm not going to climb on this replica for 12 months in between my two trips. That's not going to happen. I have other goals. One. Two, it would stop just because of the law of accommodations. I would max out my technical gains at a certain point, or the increments at which I can improve would be so small that my time would be way more effective spent elsewhere. So I'm going to make sure that I can use multiple evolutions of finger training protocols throughout the year and different climbing styles to get stronger fingers, smarter fingers, and then go back to training and have my training be that much more effective on the replica.
Yeah, that does make a lot of sense, because essentially training the moves on a replica will help you to get familiar with that replica. But if you want to be strong enough, fit enough, you can't just be dialed on the movements. You might need to implement some training that takes you beyond what you could build on that thing. And so that could be maybe putting on a weight vest and climbing the replica, or doing something else.
That's so funny you just said that, because my next thing I was going to say was, I actually want to take a step back and readdress the protocol substitution, because that is absolutely an extremely valid solution to being even more specific. If it is, I chose RFD, which just rate of force development, for whoever doesn't know what that is, but I think that's the exception, unless, what would actually be even better is if you could do your replica and then set up a pulley system, or get someone to power spot you every single time, so you can reduce the load on the fingers and speed up the movement and guarantee completion of the move. So now it's as specific as possible, and you are training the RFD. It's not as measurable as if you were using a force gauge, or even just being in a stable position and pulling down, guaranteeing the same thing every time. But I personally don't know. It depends on the situation. It's easy to argue that could be even more effective than.
That's cool. I mean, I remember the first time I ever dabbled in replica. I don't even know if replica is the right word. Maybe it's just like simulating moves, because I wasn't really replicating anything. But when my first 12C that I climbed was this climb at the red called Mosaic, and had this really tough for me you had to stand up really tall and get into an undercling, but the undercling was way above your head. And then you had to like work it up so you get your feet up and turn it into a little bit more of a positive undercling. But when you first hit it, it was like a really awkward feeling hit on like my forearms. I don't know. It was like carpal tunnel-y feeling or something like that. You know, when you're reaching high to get an undercling, it's kind of a bizarre move. And so I set an undercling on my spray wall and I set it a little bit further than I knew that it was on the project. And I trained on that. And then when I went out to the project and I got on it, I was like, oh, this is kind of easy because it's a lot closer than I've been training. So I was, in that sense, I was making the replica harder than the real thing. I'm curious for your thoughts on that when it comes to training specific types of movement.
Yeah. I mean, everything.
Or is it better just to have it exactly right? You know, like if you use the app and it's like, okay, that's a 18-inch, move. Do you want to set it at exactly 18 inches? Or is it better to like almost mess with yourself and set it at 20 inches? So it's a little bit further out,
Yeah, well, it's tricky because climbing has so many different components that you need to consider that influence the difficulty and complexity of the move. So it's not like I'm tempted to draw the comparison to being able to bench press, 200 pounds. If you are currently able to bench press 100 and let's say 90, and that's your max, if you go to do 200 and you're always failing at the ending 10% of the rep, you're never completing the repetition. You're missing out on so many of the benefits that come from, just completing the movement, teaching the movement pattern, getting it grooved into the brain, creating muscle memory and creating confidence and creating awareness, because you can't be aware when your brain is so focused on the fact that you are at absolute maximal effort. You can't calm down the mind and isolate a component. And that's what you do when you're projecting. You come off, you reflect, you think about the one thing that you need to improve, because that's really all you can devote effective focus to. And then you give it another attempt. So I did 2 versions of the Big Island before I even had the full replica. I did the best job I could. And that's why I flew out there for the first trip to get all of the scans and to feel it and see how good was my homemade replica. It was pretty close, but I was completing the moves many times per session, building a lot of confidence, learning subtleties. So you need to be able to complete the move. Like I was saying before, if you're constantly hitting the hold and your fingers open up, you're not getting the full movement dialed in. That's not how the human brain works. We need the mind needs to feel the full process, and even sometimes a bit afterwards. So you should do higher. I mean, it's just like with working out, right? If you want to do the 200-pound bench press, you don't even do all of your sets at 190, which is the max you can do. You do reps and sets at 180 because that's accomplishable. It's measurable. You can measure progress very easy. I did, let's say 150. I did 6 reps at 150 for 3 sets. Next week, I'm going to do 4 sets. I can accomplish that. And I know it's more load to the muscle. Therefore, that's more times doing the movement. It's more times stressing all of the muscles and the soft tissue that are coordinating the movement. Yeah. So you do need to do a bit of both. I think making it too hard is probably a disservice across the board, honestly.
Yeah, that actually, I really appreciate the example that you just gave there, just with lifting weights, because there's also a mental component here to wanting and benefiting from completing the moves and having confidence around completing moves. And you talked about the power spot there, or setting up a pulley, which can achieve that. You were talking about it through the lens of stimulating some higher rate of force development, because you can complete the moves faster if you're taking some load off, but also it makes it achievable to do. So you can get a power spot from somebody at the gym or use a closer hold. So if you're trying a problem on a moon board and you're trying to go up to a hold and you can't quite do it, then just grab the hold below it or to the right of it if you're going with your left hand or whatever, a little bit closer, a little bit easier until you can get that movement, that strength, that muscle memory, whatever it is, to then pop to the further one. So maybe in my scenario, it's like, maybe you make the move easier at first, then make it to where it is, and then make it harder after that, as you've kind of built up this skill and this ability to execute, to your point, fully execute the move. I'm curious, though, what happens then after you spend a lot of time on a replica, whether, again, it's a very thoughtfully executed, near exact, like you've done for Big Island and Will did for, Burden of Dreams and others have, or something that you're just trying to simulate as best you can, considering the tools that you have. At some point in time, you get out into the project. And this could be something that we're training for a long time because we're far away from the destination, like you are from France. For me, my route is a little bit closer, but just because of life, I'm just not able to get out there and actually get fit on the project as much as I can. I need to build the fitness and the strength and as much as I can here during the week. And then when I get out on the weekend as a weekend warrior, I get my attempts. But at some point we get out on the thing. And what have you discovered to be the biggest things that we should keep in mind after training on a replica for a while to then when we actually get out on the thing?
Yeah, I would have to give it all to intimidation, fear of failure, pressure. It's all going to be, I think it's all mental. Obviously there's dealing with the conditions and managing your skin, and managing your time, and, quelling excitement so that you don't go overboard with the first couple sessions where you feel so good. Like this past trip on the Big Island, I set myself with the help of my coach. We gave me a very specific amount of attempts that I was going to give each move. And I knew the intensity. I had already been there, and I knew I was going to feel better. And I did. And I stuck 3 moves that I couldn't before on the first session. And all I wanted to do was keep sticking new moves and making links. But I knew if I kept doing that, I wasn't going to get stronger from that session. And that was what I needed. I thought maybe I could do this thing during this trip. And that's how I went about it. I wanted to treat it as a training session. Man, I never, we got terrible conditions while I was there. It was the wettest February in France's history, which sucked.
Shit.
But, I never got to the point that I knew was going to come where I was going to have performance anxiety and, so much excitement around, oh my God, this could be the go. I could do it right now. We've all felt it. You have to be so well versed in feeding yourself the thoughts and the internal dialogue, the mantra, the positive affirmation, or whatever the distraction needed is to get you focused on enjoy this, be in the present moment, and focus on your movement. That's it. There's nothing else to think about. If it happens, awesome. You did all of the moves. Great. If it doesn't happen, awesome. You hopefully learned something. You got a great little workout in, and you felt strong or you felt skilled. You need to always know how you're going to feel. If you have a plan and something happens that is undesirable, but it's expected, then it's manageable. When I go out there, that the thing I always do that has helped me so much, because I used to struggle with this a lot for a short period, was, you get to the base of the climb and you're so worried. I've done all the moves. I've made it to the last move. Come on, I just need this thing to go. It's got to all work, please. And you get so stressed that you're thinking about that and you're not giving the 100% focus needed, or even 90% focus needed. So when I get down there, I always, you can ask anyone that climbs with me, let out a huge smile and usually say something a little funny. It diffuses the moment, and it allows me, because I think I naturally am so focused on my climbing when I'm climbing. It might not work for everybody to say something funny or diffuse a situation, but that puts me in the ideal headspace and focused realm. I feel so connected to my body, my movements, all the aspects of climbing that I know I need for that climb, and I climb without worries.
Yeah, that's cool. I appreciate that perspective. It is interesting with replica training where you put in essentially a lot of sessions on the project in your gym or wherever you've got access to this thing, so that when you get out on the project, oftentimes we don't have as much time as if we were going to say, if we were Chris Sharma and you're just going to be like, okay, 3 days a week, I'm going to get out on the project. Then every time out there, it doesn't seem like there's probably as much pressure, because it's just like, okay, I'm just going to go clock in. Sometimes it just comes together, cool. But if you've been training for 6 months at home on a replica and you're like, okay, I got a 2-week trip to Font, you're going to start to put this it's understandable. You're gonna have this pressure. You say, well, I'm prepared. I've sent the replica a few times. It should go, or it could go, and then you're getting to this real headspace. And I've certainly felt that on my project as well. When I was hitting peak fitness, and I kept, the closest I got was just a few moves from the chains. I mean, I was climbing an 85-foot route and coming off in the red point crux. Admittedly, it's some hard moves, but I was touching, kind of the last holds basically. And so when I hit that point every time out, I was like, okay, this could be it. And then there is a certain, like, a higher level of fear of failure or pressure, a little anxiety that you put on yourself. So I dig it. Like, all the mental tools to try to diffuse that, I think are really important. And I could see that with replica training, where you feel like you've been on the project a lot. When you get out there, you're almost there's an expectation that there's going to be a higher level of performance. What else comes into play besides the mental side, where you've been training in a gym on, plastic holds, and then you get out there? I mean, I'm thinking about, kind of the texture of the rock, or the conditions that you can run into. What surprised you, either good or bad, when you got out onto the Big Island, having been on the replica for so long first?
I don't really think there's anything majorly significant. If you did the job right, the climb should feel very, very similar. The obviously texture of the holds is massive. If you don't have the correct texture, things are either going to feel so much harder or so much easier, or your skin management process is going to be completely different, and you're going to have to really avoid delusion of, if you worked on something that was pillow soft on your skin and really ergonomically friendly, then you get on, so say like, Burden of Dreams, which, it's like kind of smooth-ish, but it's got those little crystal edges. This is what I've heard. And you give it the same amount of attempts, you're probably going to burn through your skin way faster. And we all know that that's probably this number 2 most important aspect of your physical condition going into performing outside. I definitely do want to say one more thing about the mental aspect, because I feel for the people that is basically everybody that holds almost all of the regard and in esteem to sending boulder problems and routes. And I think that we so, infrequently reward progress and recognize progress in climbing, rather than what we currently do, which is say, it's black and white, right? It's send or no send. And I think a ton of people, you can see that in their posts, like, I didn't do it this trip. I failed. I need to go back, train, and get stronger. There are definitely people out there that, can congratulate themselves and give merit to their improvements in their process, how much closer they got, how much stronger they felt, more skilled. But when I went on the trip to the Big Island, and honestly, this whole year, when I went on all of my trips, I really wasn't focused on sending all of these boulders. I likened it to like when you write a paper, or you take a test and you get to retake a test in school. You submit the paper is a good analogy, because you submit the first draft, you get on this thing for your first session, and then let's say you go back and you replica train, or even you just keep working it. And if it's something you wanted to sending it is kind of like getting 100 on your test. It's a perfect A+. But when you submit it, unless you flash the boulder, if it's hard to set your limit, it's really worth something to you. You probably score like a 40 or a 50. And when you get that back, it hurts on a paper. It's like 40 or a 50. Are you kidding me?
Right.
No way. And so that's what You're not expecting, when you get a 40 or 50, to then in your next submission go up to 100. But and honestly, for many people, that that's not even attainable. Like 100 is, this thing is such a hard task. So wouldn't 95%, if you could resubmit and get the feedback, resubmit, get the feedback. I mean, your teacher's nice enough to let you do that. If you eventually end with an A, a 95, that feels pretty freaking awesome, man. We're so conditioned to think that it is only a send that will make us happy. And we've made it true. A really easy example for me is Karma in Fontainebleau. I have tried that thing across 3 trips, and I've always given it 1 to 2 sessions each trip. This last one, I gave it 4. And it is 2 moves, man. You slap that sloper dish, you do bump, and then you get the heel up and rock over and go left hand. Okay, the first trip, got the right hand and got the heel up 1 time. The next trip, I did that 2 times. This last trip, on my first session, I got the heel up 4 times. And I could never slap with that left hand. I just couldn't do it. I have an old left leg injury. Honestly, shouldn't have even been on the boulder problem this season until I fully rehabbed my leg. Right. But I wanted to see if I could do it. So every session, I made what felt like 5% gain. And I didn't send it. And it's a grade that I have sent many of. It's a V12. It's an 8A plus. And I've done multiple 13s. So logically, with 7 sessions, it's the most I've given any boulder of that grade. I should have done this by now. But I didn't feel any type of way for not sending this thing. I was so happy after every session walking out of there. I was so happy with my trip. I didn't send any of the hard boulders that I really set out to do. I just made progress. I felt great. I can't wait to go back. I don't even care if I just get on a whole bunch of new boulders and don't do them. If I fall on the last move of the Big Island, oh my goodness. Could you imagine being that skilled and that strong to fall on the last move of V15? I can die happy with that. The amount of moves. I did, 9 moves consecutive of V15. Boo-hoo, I didn't do 10.
Yeah.
It's just moving across a rock.
Thanks for sharing that, Charlie. That's such a refreshing and important perspective to have in an outcome-obsessed sport. And not everybody is outcome-obsessed. A lot of people just climb just to move. A lot of people don't have projects. They're just like, cool, let's just go climb on something today. And that was me for a long time. I've become a little bit project-obsessed in this phase that I'm in right now, and I'm psyched on it. I think that's common as well after a certain amount of time in the sport where you identify whether it's a grade you're shooting for, whether it's a specific route or boulder that you're shooting for, and you get really psyched on it. But it's super important to remember going from a 40% on the paper to a 70 to a 90. Those are massive leaps to be very, very proud of. And I think I needed to hear that because that was certainly me. I mean, my first sessions out, I couldn't even do all the moves on this route. And there's a lot of freaking moves, an 85-foot route. And then at the end of this winter / kind of early spring season, I was falling just a few moves from the chains. So I was going, 80 of the 85 feet. And so, it was probably a 12D or a soft 13A that I was doing multiple times, ground up. And I didn't clip the chains in that season, but I'm very confident I will in the fall. And of course, I don't think I will be super happy to walk away from this one without doing it. I really want it freaking bad. But I think it is important to tick those wins along the way. And you mentioned that even as you set the replica there, you had like a list of 40 things that you wanted to do. I guess there were different moves and link ups and overlaps and these kinds of things. And so, you said it was important to have these goals along the way that you could feel good about accomplishing. But I think that could be a fun way to wrap this up, which is essentially whether we're training on replicas, training on the route or the project itself, or just, out kind of working on, random moonboard problems and TB2 problems and this kind of thing. I'm curious about how you like to work with clients and also just for yourself on setting those goals, those goals that kind of roll up into the bigger thing. And how do you break that down so that we can feel that achievement while staying on course for the bigger objective?
Oh, it's just momentum, man. You ever play Mario Kart?
Oh yeah, all the time.
Yeah, you hit those streaks on the track that boost you up.
Boosters. Yeah,
boosters. You hit the mystery box and you get a little boost. You go faster when you get more boosts, right? And that is when you feel proud of yourself. You feel happy. You feel accomplished. That reinforces your focus on what was the thing that made me feel like that. Oh, I tried really hard. Oh, I focused on my toe digging in. Ooh, I did those exercises for the past month and those really helped me feel great. Oh man. Or I just held that position for a slightly little bit longer time because I was focused on my pinky pulling down a little bit harder. Every little thing that resulted in a better performance than before, or even the same performance as before, but more times in the session than you ever have done. There are an endless amount of ways to look at your sessions and seek out successes. Like I said before, we really often only see black and white. When I get clients that I work with in person and we get on a boulder and they fall on move 3 and then they fall on move 5 and it's a 7-move boulder. When I get somebody that falls on move 3 and then falls on move 5 and they are still upset, that is a discussion that we need to have. Because you are missing, in Mario Kart, what you just did was you just drove around the speed boost. You could have hit it. It was right there, but you swerved it. Why? What is it in your mind that is preventing you or forcing you to swerve every single time? Your focus is probably in the wrong place. And that's actually slowing you down from getting to the goal, which is finishing the race fast. You can make that decision yourself. When I am sessioning, I get weird looks all the time because I'll flat back and I will pop up like a bouncy ball and throw my hands in the air and go, yes. And they're like, what is wrong with him? There's something going on with this guy.
Right.
Like, no, dude, my hand was there for at least a quarter second longer. That's going down. That's going to happen. Okay, so it was keep my left leg a little more tight and flag the right leg into the wall. Really push. Okay, next time I'm going for 0.3 seconds more. Eventually, I'm going to stick that move because I'm in that great mind state. I feel good about myself. We know that when we're on one, we're on fire. We're on fire. You're feeling really good. You did something that you felt good about. It's going to happen again. The odds are there, and it's not a coincidence. There's science behind it. So you also are robbing yourself of enjoying your time tremendously. I can leave the gym having had 10 bursts of joy and feel so excited and amplified and empowered. Whereas the same thing could happen. I could have the same session being somebody else and leave the gym and think, I didn't stick any moves today, or I stuck one freaking move. God, that was a terrible session. But to me, that was literally the best session I've ever had. I stayed within my parameters. I got a great training session in, and I made progress so many times today. Oh man, I got so much better. That was so good. Can't wait to do it again. This is sick.
Yeah, dude, I love it. This conversation is the Mario Kart power boost that I needed, Charlie. I love it. I love that we've come back around here into mental game, because I think, it tends to be the favorite chapter that I have when I have a lot of these conversations, and it's something that you talk quite a bit about. I think we should do a follow-up conversation. I'd love to do a follow-up conversation that's focused on that. You had a post on Instagram not too long ago talking about, how do we progress like professionals? And it was about mental game. You wrote an article on it, and we'll link to that here so people can check it out in the meantime. But it's an area that I'm just endlessly fascinated by. It's what makes our sport so interesting and so dynamic and so exciting. And to celebrate those victories and use that as the power boost, whether we've mapped them out, whether we wrote it down when we went into the gym that day or not and said, oh, I want to hold this hold for a half second longer, but just recognizing it in the moment, like you're saying, just is not only powerful for our progression, but also, to your point, it's a lot more fun. It's a lot more fun to leave the gym having 10 bursts of joy, like you were saying, than to leave it and saying, oh man, I didn't accomplish anything today. It's a really refreshing and important way to look at things, man. I appreciate the perspective.
Well, definitely, you're welcome. First, thank you for saying those things. It was super kind. There is an opportunity to have that exact experience even on your worst days. And it all obviously needs to be true. No one can say, wow, that was so great, awesome, if you low point. If there is nothing you can extrapolate from the experience that is a positive, it's impossible. No one can create false joy. joy is joy. It's not masquerading your emotions in front of others or even yourself. That doesn't work. So you need to find pride in anything. And then, I have clients that used to tell me, oh man, I had a horrible session today. I went in, wasn't recovered, and I left the gym after my warm up. And then I'll say, well, first off, unbelievable job walking out of there. That's what the best version of you does. That was so smart. Instead of digging yourself even deeper and trying to, make a great day out of something that was never going to be. But now I get the same client after we talk about that and they recognize, oh, wait a second. That was a really mature, responsible decision. I will have clients literally text me, so psyched, dude. Went in, didn't feel it, left the gym before I even finished the warm up. Tomorrow's the day. And they're like, woo, I just dodged a bullet. Oh my God, the old me would have just wrecked himself. That would have been a lost week. Now it was a saved day. Oh my God, look how far I've come. Tomorrow's going to be amazing. You can find it in everything.
Yeah, man. I like that. I really like how in tune you are with not just yourself, but also your clients with that understanding where you're at and taking those scenarios as a win as well. Understanding that, you live to fight another day. If you call it quits, it's not a failure. It's a success for knowing that maybe it's just not, today's not the day. We're just not recovered enough, or we're not ready, or we're just not feeling it. And, that can be a tough thing for climbers because we like to try to, a lot of us are very analytical and like to stick to our schedules and that kind of thing. But to have that flexibility and that grace with ourselves to say, yeah, you know what, leave it for another day. That's another type of win. It's another type of boost there. Man, this is really great. I think to be continued. I'd love to do another episode here where we really explore and dive into some of these mental tactics that you like to implement to keep not only on track and psyched and motivated and progressing, but also to keep that joy and to keep healthy so that we can do this sport for many, many years. It's a lifelong sport if we're manage it all properly. So I'd love to loop back and have that conversation with you. In the meantime, I'm going to be traveling around, so I'll try to keep my minimum effective dose going. I appreciate your insights on that. And I'm going to start putting together some ideas on a replica over here. I'll keep you posted on that as well. And make sure you're letting us know how things are going on your side.
Definitely. And seriously, man, if you want to like stay on after the call and just talk about like what you can do for your personal replica or for your trip, I am so psyched to talk about what the minimal effective dose, like what an easy short program should look like and how you can honestly think about it in the future.
Oh, thank you, dude. I appreciate that. Yeah, let's chat for a second. Definitely. This was really fun. Thank you, Charlie. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Ryan.
And that wraps things up with Coach Charlie Schreiber of Paradigm Climbing. So thoughtful, so stoked, so strong. I really, really enjoyed, especially this last section here as we focused on finding that joy and finding that fulfillment and that happiness in success. Even if it's just these little moves, can we leave a gym session feeling absolutely pumped and joyful and lighter and happy for the rest of our day because we did a little thing rather than sent the big thing? I just love it. I don't know. I'm gonna put it to practice. I'm already putting it to practice actually, and it's already making a difference. I hope it will for you as well. Now you can check out those links in your notes if you'd like to connect with Charlie or one of the other coaches over at Paradigm, Alex or Cameron, and then definitely follow Charlie on Instagram. He puts out some incredibly thoughtful, funny, and useful content. Now, if you'd like to see the uncut video of this chat and score instant access to more than 60 hours of bonus content, I'm talking about bonus episodes with the likes of Adam Andra, Hazel Finley, Alex Honnold, Chris Sharma, Allison Vest, Tom Randall, and so many more amazing athletes and coaches. Well, you can get it all right now for about the price of a beer each month. And I got to tell you, I could go for a beer right now because I've been working really hard out here in the podcast/utility closet. So if you are in a position to buy me one of those ice cold beers, it would be so rad. There's also a free trial happening right now, so if you want to date me a little bit before you buy me that beer, I get it. You can listen to all that bonus content for free and then stick around if you like it. Just swing on over to patreon.com/The Struggle Climbing Show to get access to that full library right now. Or if you're an iPhone person, you can subscribe right there in your Apple podcast player. Thank you so much. Huge thanks and appreciation to our show sponsors who have brought you this episode at zero cost. Check your show notes for the links and special discounts to those brands that are only available to Struggle listeners. And by the way, you can see all of the show's awesome sponsors and special deals by just popping over to thestruggleclimbingShow.com/deals. Hey, did you know that The Struggle's carbon neutral in partnership with the Honnold Foundation? They are just doing amazing work to bring clean energy to communities around the world. You can get inspired by their latest grant recipients over at honnoldfoundation.org, and then just toss them some love if you can, even a few bucks a month. They're doing such cool and impactful work. And lastly, The Struggle is a proud member of the Plugtone Audio Collective, a diverse group of the best, most impactful podcasts in the outdoor industry. This show was produced and hosted by me, Ryan Devlin, and edited by Glen Walker. All right, that clips the anchors on this episode. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you liked it, and if you like this show just in general, would you consider sharing it with your climbing friends? The more who listen, the closer that I will get to making this my full-time gig, which would be so cool. So thank you in advance for sharing this episode and also rating and reviewing it if you got a hot second. Really appreciate you. I hope your training and your climbing are going great. And if you're struggling like me, well, at least the struggle makes us stronger. I'll see you soon.